Well, hey, Lydia, how's it going?
Hi, Sarah. I'm good. How are you today?
Living the dream.
The end of June, and there's so much to talk about right now.
So much is happening. It's wild. And there's just a lot of news around all of it right now.
Yes.
And we're
Yep.
doing our best to just make sense of it
Yep.
because it is definitely confusing. And, you know, we'll start with today, like Lydia said, is the final day that anybody can get started on a forbearance plan. If anybody wants to get into a forbearance plan, call your servicer today. It is 12:51 p.m. on June 30th, Arizona time. You got about 4 hours and 9 minutes.
This
So
is it.
the time, you got a little bit of time left. And we don't want to get this confused with this is not forbearance is separate from the foreclosure and eviction moratoriums that were both extended last week. Those were extended for the final time for 1 month through the end of July. So those eviction moratorium and foreclosure moratorium are still in place. It's just the forbearance option
Yes.
that is ending today. And that is not if they're already in a program, it's if you have not started your forbearance plan.
Right.
So that's where, so if you start, you still have upwards of, even for some servicers, 15 months of forbearance plan protection. So, you got to pay attention to what's going on out there, and every servicer is different, but, keep that in mind. There are options. And,
Yes.
and even as we have all these great options available, the numbers in forbearance are declining. We're at 17 weeks straight of declines, which is great.
That's great.
We're down, yes, exactly. We're down to about 3.93% of mortgages, or, roughly about 2 million borrowers that are in a forbearance plan. So that is definitely down. We've come a long way.
Yep.
We were over 8%, at the beginning. So this is a big deal. If you look at it broken down by stage, 10.7% of borrowers are in the initial stage. And then even going further, initial requests this week dropped to their lowest point, kind of since the beginning. And they're calling, we were down, it was only about 4 basis points of borrowers, which is 0.04% of borrowers that asked to get in there. So, I mean, we're talking very low numbers there. The majority of borrowers that are in a plan remain on extension. That's 83.1%, and it is actually down in recent weeks. And the reentries are 6.2%, and those are also down in recent weeks. So the only thing that is up a little bit was the initial, but that's, it's not a big number. All of them are kind of shrinking from past weeks.
Right.
When we look at the forbearance exits from June 1st through June 20th, 45.2% of borrowers either continue to make their payments, got caught up, or paid off their loan as they exited their plan. So we're looking really a good solid group of people are making their payments. We're still hanging out. It's like 15.3%. It's right around that 15% of people exiting that are not in a loss mitigation plan. They are exiting behind on their payments. That's really remains the group that's going to need to know most about their options.
Right.
And and they have options. This is the thing, is even with the end of forbearance, borrowers still have so many, and Lydia's going to, I know, go into this as well. But if Black Knight is saying that that 96% of the borrowers that are in a forbearance plan have at least 10% equity, which is usually enough to go through a traditional sale or to avoid a short sale. So you can have, I mean, that's a humongous number that we're really not going to see a whole big group of people coming out that are going to be upside down and in a really bad place.
Right.
Now, one of the biggest things is we're looking at, as forbearance ends, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which oversees kind of anything consumer borrowing, which is mortgages. So they put out yesterday an extensive mortgage servicing regulations in hopes that it will prevent any unwelcome surprises for these borrowers who are exiting their program. The rules kind of laid out, they have very specific, servicers cannot be like they said, unprepared is unacceptable.
Right.
So In the rules, servicers can initiate foreclosure action only after the borrower has submitted a loss mitigation application and either isn't eligible for it or breaks or rejects the loss mitigation agreement. Servicers can skip those caveats though if the borrower was already 6 months behind on their payment prior to March of 2020, or if the property's been abandoned. And I know that's something, Lydia, you and I were just talking about, is abandoned properties and what does that mean and how many. CFPB also goes into clarifying what's going on with those escrow shortages, and that's going to be like taxes, homeowners insurance, and a lot of people in the industry call them impounds. Servicers definitely want to recover that money, and so that can be included in the loss mitigation options. And the rule also places a limit on how much the servicers can require borrowers to deposit in an escrow account for the coming year. Servicers are, they have to offer some streamlined loan modifications to borrowers as long as the loan modification does not increase their monthly payments or stretch out to a term longer than 40 years. And I think that's interesting, 40 years. FHA did announce that they are rolling out a new 40-year loan product. So we'll learn.
They're all going to end up with that, I think.
Cute, right? Servicers can't charge any extra fees for the loan modifications, and if the borrower accepts that loan modification, the servicer must waive any late charges. So there's a lot of information here. CFPB wants servicers to be super proactive about communicating with the borrowers about the options, especially if they're not in a forbearance plan, but they are behind on their payments. If the borrowers are still delinquent, servicers must contact them well ahead of the end of their forbearance period. So this is going to be a big thing, as long as they can reach them to say, hey, we need to talk about a loss mitigation plan to put in place. And then finally, the rule also adds clarification on the definition of a financial hardship to mean any hardship that the pandemic brought in, either indirectly or directly, from March of 2020 through February of 2021. And these rules will all take effect at the end of August. So as we're looking at what's going to happen, and CFPB has got really specific guidelines on how they want servicers to behave. And the CFPB is also urging any borrowers to say, hey, that's not the treatment I'm receiving, to go and go to the CFPB's website, which we can share, and post and let them know, hey, I'm not getting this kind of treatment. And that's what the whole point of the CFPB is, to be there for the consumers. So this is something that we're watching closely. And I know, Lydia, you've got a lot of information on this.
And I agree with you, Sarah. I think that group of 15% that you talked about earlier, it very well could be that they just don't know that there's options out there. Yes, so it's really important for us in the industry, lenders, real estate agents, title people, to get with our groups of people in our database and say, hey, if you did this, there are some options for you, and that's really important.
Yes. So, and I think that so many people feel like, oh no, I'm afraid. They need to make these phone calls, and now the servicers are required to call them. So answer the phone. It's not it's not the scary calls, it's helpful calls.
It's the helpful calls, yes. So on the servicing side of things, it's interesting because this information we didn't know until, I believe it was Friday, right, Sarah, that you let me know. Friday was when they kind of gave that 1 month extension, and it is only for 1 month. They were on foreclosures. Yeah, they were very specific. We get 1 more month and that is it. So this is the month to prepare. If you are having issues, talk to a good real estate agent, real estate attorney, get with someone that can kind of give you options and guide you. But what's interesting is last week on the servicing side of things that I do, there were 15 BPOs dropped, and BPOs are usually done. They can be done for many reasons, either refi or something like that, taking off mortgage insurance. They ask for a BPO, but a lot of these could very well be people that are close to or possibly on that cusp of being foreclosed on. So the servicing company works with lots of different banks, and some of these customers of theirs want to know what the values are. So that's what these BPOs are finding out what the values are. So 15 of them dropped between Wednesday and Thursday, didn't have anything on Friday. And then all of a sudden, Monday and yesterday, I had 16 drop in 2-day time. So literally in a 4-day period, there were about 31 BPOs dropped. So they are preparing because they want to know what the values of those properties are. And that doesn't mean they're going to be foreclosed on. It just means that they are starting their homework and getting ready. So it's really good information to get with your agent to find out.
And part of what you're finding out too is also to see if the property is vacant or not, which could have implications for what, we just talked about with the servicer's requirements.
They want to know if there's cars in the driveway, furniture in the house. It's not just looking at the property. That's the big thing too, is looking at the property, how it looks on the outside. But talk about homes that are abandoned. So the other thing that kind of came up over the last month or two that, and it didn't even dawn on me when we first started down this whole forbearance situation and the stopping of a foreclosure, are the tax liens. The tax liens have been suspended, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Well, I've done some research since then, and even on the website for the tax lien, the government website, you can't get really any information. And, so the government can't tell servicers, lenders, landlords, you can't foreclose, and then they are allowed to foreclose on the tax lien. They are in the same boat. So that is one thing that I am going to be checking on, in just keeping up with that over this next month, because if the tax websites come back up, then we know that they're kind of preparing for that. But what's interesting is part of what I do is go to people's houses, and these tax liens have been not a lot. There hasn't been a lot of them because they just have been suspended. But the few that I have done, the handfuls that I've done, they want to know if the house is abandoned. And actually, all of them have been abandoned except for the one I did last week, which was not abandoned. Interesting, huh? So, and if they are abandoned, I think they can move forward with foreclosing, right?
That's based on the information just put out. Yes.
Yep. So that's one thing that I am doing, is checking to see if the home is vacant or occupied. It's very interesting. So I'll keep everybody updated on that.
And you mentioned that a lot of them don't even have a mortgage. So it's that they're late on the taxes, not necessarily because of a mortgage. Delinquency.
So for people who don't realize, when they get a mortgage, they have to pay taxes and insurance and HOA fees if there's an HOA, right? So normally, it's not in every state, but in Arizona a lot, we have it in our mortgages. I know when I lived in California, we had it separately. And I know a friend of mine that lives in Colorado, her taxes are paid separately from her mortgage payment as well. So it's a state by state situation. But that being said, when you stop making your payment for whatever reason, the forbearance came in or another situation, the person, the lender who has your tax lien or has the mortgage doesn't want to go through a tax lien foreclosure. So they will be paying those taxes. They will be paying that insurance, so that if the house burns down, there's insurance there.
There's protection,
for protection. They will be paying those HOA fees. So those are the fees that normally, if you're not making a payment, they accumulate and they have to be paid back, right? Well, on a lot of these tax liens, a lot of these tax lien people do not have a mortgage. So a lot of times what happens, or what used to happen before the pandemic, is a lot of them were elderly people that would get, a tax lien bill twice a year and just forget to pay it, or didn't open it up to even pay it because they didn't know about it. So it's unfortunate, but that does happen.
Absolutely.
So make sure you open up all your paperwork and pay your taxes, because the government wants their money first.
They will take it.
And that is the top lien holder, is your taxes. So make sure you're paying your taxes. That's one thing. So, but I will keep up with that over the next month, because obviously I think that's going to open up as well. So, and lastly, what I wanted to tell people is even my own self, I've had 3 different situations in the last few months that either buyers or sellers, or even a friend of mine told me privately that they have done a forbearance. And, you know, a forbearance is not a 4-letter word. People need to realize that it happened, and people took these forbearances out because they lost income for whatever reason, or lost their job, or had less income. Forbearances were used for that reason. It's the ones that didn't lose their job that utilizes them, that they don't really need the forbearances. But if you did do a forbearance, you need to be aware, and we as real estate agents need to start asking our own clients this, because I had 2 different situations I was in contracts with and didn't realize that they had done forbearances. And if I had known prior to going through this whole scenario, I could have done a different marketing strategy, or we could have maybe taken something a little less. You know, we could have took a buyer's offer that was a little bit less than, and just get out of the contract a little faster. So I will say this, that if you know someone, or if you have done a forbearance, you need to let your lender know if you are buying, and you need to let your real estate agent know whether you are buying or selling, because those are things that it's not for us to tell the other side. It's for us to be able to know, let's do a strategy to get you out from under this forbearance as quickly as possible, and still get you top dollar for your home. So people, they are embarrassed about it, and they don't need to be. We as real estate agents can help guide you. And if you've got a real estate agent that isn't as knowledgeable on forbearances, there are lots of real estate attorneys and title people that can at least put you in the right direction to talk to someone. So make sure that you talk to somebody to let them know prior to getting under contract, because one of my situations was someone who was trying to buy a home and found out that they didn't get pre-qualified because they did do a forbearance on a house that was in another state that they were not selling. So these scenarios are going to come up, and people need to realize that real estate agents in general, that has to be one of our questions when we talk to our clients is, do you know if you've done a forbearance? And if you have you paid it off? Those are questions that we need to know upfront, so we know how to move forward with their situation.
Totally agree. I totally agree. And as the inventory rises, that is going to matter more. So
absolutely, because you know, properties are staying on the market a little bit longer, and we are not getting as many multiple offers as we used to. So people need to understand that. You know, the more information you can give to your agent, the better we can service you, and the better we can get you in or out of whatever contracts we need to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome.
So a lot's going to happen over the. So we will definitely keep you posted on what changes come up. And there, you know, it's very confusing, and there is a lot of information, as you just talked about. You know, I know you're gonna post that site, but if someone doesn't understand it, if they read it and they just don't understand it, they should call us, and we'd be happy to explain it to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're here to help. And Lydia, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks,
you know,
Sarah.
Anybody with wanting more information, be sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel, and we'll be talking again soon.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Bye.